Okay. Okay. So in this next session, we'll do a little bit of hands-on, not in depth, but just to give you an idea of where to look and to get you into habit, really. So I mean, I've deliberately kept the sessions sort of 45 minutes, an hour, because after that most people start switching off. So I want to get the most out of the session, really, and try to repeat and recover and just hammer home some of the key points. Anyway, so this session is about constructing your response, and given your particular situation of where the PEC's response is likely to come out in November, a lot of these activities you should be doing now, really. And I'll probably, as we come over certain parts, I'll explain why. Several of my grey hairs are caused by bid responses. So I mean, okay, just to give you an idea of the agenda, and also I mean, a lot of the slides you'll find here, they're jam-packed with bullet points. And the main reason for that is I typically wouldn't do a presentation in this style, but I think it's good that the information is there so you can review them, offline and use them later. Really, see them as a reference source if you want. So we'll look again at the ITT structure, a bid decision, building your team, creating a WBS, assuming you know what that is, building a response if you're going to prime, some things to think about if you're going to subcontract, looking at the work to be performed, the special tender conditions, so we start to break into the documents and the how and what your proposal responses in those should look like, or what they should cover. So we'll look at the technical proposal, the manager proposal, what not to do. We'll basically create a top-level TOC in the example, or table of content. We'll look into the evaluation, what they'll look for, some conclusions, and in the appendix, I don't know if I have enough time to cover that, but it's there as a good reference, which there's essentially some tables there which map the criteria, the evaluation criteria, the typical evaluation criteria, against where you'll find that in the statement of work and where your response to that should be. Yeah, so it's like a simple little checklist, really. So even if we don't have enough time, there's probably about 6 additional slides or something like that, but if we don't have enough time, then they're a good referral point. So go look at them. Okay, so again, back to the same structure. I'll be like a nagging hen in a minute, because you'll be sick of me repeating the same terms, but I've seen it so many times that hence why I'm just pointing that out to you. So read the cover letter. That's going to tell you who the contractual officer is, how they want you to respond, when clarifications will need to be in by, and any other deadlines that are applicable. So they may define budget in this particular case for specs, they won't, and they don't always do that anyway. Sometimes they'll give you an envelope, sometimes they won't. So there's no rule, but if there is going to be one, you'll find it there. And there are some caveats to that. If you don't know what that is and you've never read it, and you put a price in over that, then you're out already. So I keep stressing it, but I'm not going to stop. Read it, digest it, go through it a couple of times. Be clear, because you'll need that to construct your bid plan later. So you'll find any particular constraints or caveats in the case of a PECS opportunity. The caveats will be quite simple. The organisations all need to be in Estonia. It's quite simple. But they may, in other opportunities, there may be particular rules that they'll apply. For example, they might say, okay, these countries are particularly under-returned at the moment, so therefore you'll get some brownie points if you include them. And there'll be any particular special measures for SMEs. Perhaps they might evaluate an offer from an SME more favourably than they will if there's a prime involved, for example. There'll also be the statement of work. So again, that's the list of what you're going to do and what the guts of what your technical response is going to be focused around. The special tender conditions, I've highlighted that in the red because I just see it so many times that people just ignore them. They don't even look. And this specifies often in very clear terms what each section of the proposal should include, how it should include them, any particular tables that they may mandate should be there. So failure to read this really could mean a completely failed bid. And draft contract. So if there's draft contract, then if you have access to legal or commercial teams, or you're that way minded yourself, read it, digest it. In most cases they're the same, so once you get used to one, it'll pretty much be the same next time, but sometimes it does change if there's particular, for example, some SLAs or OLAs involved. So don't do that late, because sometimes it's not easy to get commercial teams to review something in only a few days, for example. And if they've never read it before, then it might take them a little time to digest that and understand the responsibilities the organisation's going to be under. And highlighted again, please don't forget to read the cover letter and the STC, because they will give you some tips of how they want it responded. So the first thing you need to do in this particular case, as you're now building up to a PECS opportunity, is to try to start to understand that now. What are you going to propose? Do you need someone else? What is ESA looking to do? What some of the programs that are coming up over the next few years, or on now, that you think you could bring some value into, and what kind of partners you would want. Typically, with an ITT opportunity, you would sit and evaluate that beforehand, and you do a matrix a bit like this. You need to understand what and how you can play. Are you in a position to prime? If you've got the vast majority of capability to do this, that might favour you, unless you're aware that there's another consortium or other consortia that are also in a very good position. Or can you just cover some specific part of that, and therefore the best place for you is a subcontract? So you need to go through that decision quite early, really, or as early as you can when the opportunity is finally released. But you should already be prepped for that. But at this moment, if you're building for PECS, if you don't have an idea already, then you should get one quite quickly, because the bid time, something like 4 weeks, really, it will run out very, very quickly. Particularly if you have to work with another organisation, because you will need to get contractual terms in place between yourselves and be very, very clear on how you're dividing the work. And really, if you don't have much chance, stop. So something to think about in terms of your overall mechanics. So let's just assume that you've got a great idea, or you've found an opportunity that's coming, and hey, you've got quite a large percentage of the capability to do this. So you're going to opt to prime this deal. So first of all, you need to you've been building your proposition up. You've identified possible partners. Teaming can be a strong thing within ESA responses, particularly if they've got strong heritage in the area that you're looking to move into. That's usually very well received. So your team should be justifiable, should unify the proposition. I mean, to some of you this will be old hat, yeah. So switch off if it is. Now, the first things you need to start to do is to try and divide this work up. You need to get a very clear work breakdown between you and the subcontractor. You need to be very clear on what they're going to do, what you are going to do, what documents they own, what documents you own, and also the price. Yeah. So a fatal move is to leave this until you're a week from the end, because you've just got no time to. If there's anything wrong there, or you don't understand the price, or you don't understand some of the things that they're offering, you've got very little time to fix those problems in a week or two. So but within the first week you should have that structured, if not beforehand, at least to a reasonable degree. Be clear of the commitments that you expect from your subcontractors if you're priming. And what I mean by this, have a very clear bid plan yourself, organise yourself, have a bid lead and responsibles for each document. They may be the same person if it's a small response. If it's a big response, don't let it be the same people. Have clear ownerships, clear responsibilities and clear deadlines. And your bid manager should structure himself around that and make that clear to your subs, i.e. what you expect from them, why, sorry not why, when, and who's responsible on their side for commercial aspects or for technical aspects. Again, they can be the same person, but just be clear who owns something. Because as I said, 4 weeks turns into what appears to be 2 minutes in, when you start running, because you'll get very, very active very quickly. You're going to need to prepare your commercial response so that get all the financials correct. Yeah? So again, the WBS is key on that. The WBS, or work breakdown structure, is going to, be the document which you're all working around. So you can understand what they're likely to be bringing, how much that piece of work is going to cost, so you can drive a final price. Do it early. You don't want it in the last week. If they don't understand something, or they've made some assumptions, be clear of what they are. Because as I said, if you're into the last few days and you've got all of a sudden a large price that comes in and you don't understand it, you don't have much time to fix that. So do those things very early. Start those discussions early. When you're looking at your finances, don't underestimate documentation for ESA. They have a lot of standards in place. This does require an effort to put documentation together. So don't underestimate it. Be clear of what standards are applicable and what documents are applicable. It's like the ECSS 40, for example, yeah, which is their methodology. It describes all the documents of a particular type of a program will require. So there'll be more or less a tick box. If it's a prototype, we just need these documents. But if it's an operational system, that list can be very, very long and will take considerable effort. So just be wary of the output documents. They'll be clear in the statement of work what output documents they want, and think about them. And also how you'll divide those, particularly if they're shared documents between you and a subcontract. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are aware of WBS and how this forms, so I thought it was worthwhile just to put a bit of a diagram up here. So what you should have is sometimes they will, well quite often actually, they will break down into work packages and work package numbers themselves. You'll see this in the ITT. You can further break down that any which way you want. Yeah? You can add work packages if you want, if it makes sense. That's fine. So the first thing you do if you're priming a construct is to assemble it and mark where you expect a subcontractor or which work packages you expect the subcontractor to do. Just don't team for the fun of it or because you've got some kind of relationship. You must be able to justify that. And there's a proposal in which you'll do that later, and I'll come on to that. Anyway, keep things clear, keep things precise, break down as you want. There is a penalty, there's not a penalty, but the more you break down, the more burden you'll come to when you come to do your finances. Yeah, because there is a direct relationship. So don't go overboard if you don't need to. Be clear amongst yourselves on what you're doing. But don't go to finite level if it's not required at this point, yeah? Because that does affect how you respond financially and how much effort will be required. Ooh. Okay, so you've opted, in this particular case, you've opted to be a subcontractor. Yeah, You've identified it, you've got some capability, and you've now found a prime to work with. Great. So one of the worst things you can do as a subcontractor is sit back. Just think, hey, this is, I've got a little case here with a prime. He should know what he's doing, and not be very active. That's one of the worst things you can do, particularly if you've got capability, you know what's going on. Query them. Get a bid plan from them, get the WBS from them, be clear of how they're structured, and if you've got comment on that, comment on it. Don't just sit back is what I'm trying to say. Understand your responsibilities, when your deadlines are, who you're going to put forward as your points of contact through the bid period. Another thing to be careful of is during a bid point is when your staff's on holidays. don't make assumptions, check. That's also another real painful scenario. For example, if you're a multinational organisation, you know, all of a sudden, halfway through the bid, the guy gets, oh, sorry, I'm off on holiday the next 2 weeks. Ooh. You know, these kind of situations can occur if you don't do the checks. So query people, ask people, know your own team's availabilities, and make that aware to the prime. You know, long bid periods, yeah, of course, you know, typically you'll see people go on leave, particularly in summer periods, yeah, it's not uncommon. Get a clear understanding of the prime's view of the WBS concerning you. Challenge it. If you think, oh, wait a minute, well, actually, I'm better suited to this or that, you know, challenge the WBS. What you want from this is a win. Sometimes with subcontract arrangements, we see where teams are more concerned about the effort of work they're going to get than the work itself, which can be a mistake, because it's ultimately you want to win. It's not about share. You know, 80% of nothing is still nothing. It's better to have, you know, a percentage of what you can actually do and actually build a strong story around that you can present to ESA. So you know, don't make that your first thought. Essentially, you know, work with primes, identify the best value that you can give, and shape around that. Start doing your cost estimates early. Don't leave that. Start writing the technical solution. Usually, the first thing the technical guys do is they're off writing the proposal before you've even started. You know, first thing you do is start to get the price calculated, because you're going to need to figure out, can you do this, and what cost it's going to be. There's nothing worse coming back later, and then you and the prime are trying to negotiate the price of the deal, particularly if they've now set some kind of overall price and it now doesn't match. That can get a very challenging, very busy period for both of you, both of which you don't want to lose time on. You know, you want to keep that as much of the effort away from that and on the response, because ultimately it's the response they're going to see. So negotiate that position, you know, with the prime. Be clear of the WBS and what value you're bringing around that. Ensure all the commercials are in place. So you've got a teaming agreement with them. It states what is expected from you, i.e., what documents you're going to output, and as clear as possible, you know, and what assumptions you've placed on that will go eventually into the financial proposal. Because sometimes you will have to make assumptions. And as long as those are clear to you, so that's fine. But you all need to know what, otherwise you could get into a problem later on. Yeah, oh, I didn't know how to do that, and you know, oh, pay presso, that's another 10K or whatever I'm going to have to spend, and I'm not prepared for it. And if possible, get a subcontract contract in place before bid submission, yeah, or close to it. Not just a TA, if you can. Yeah, it's not always possible, but if you can do, and the prime's organised, he'll usually have that in place, because it takes some worries and pain away from him, because everyone's clear. Now, the whole idea of these things is for everybody to be clear what everyone's responsibilities, roles, and what all the assumptions are across all the team members. Again, be active, talk to the primes, understand their position. Just don't assume, yeah, it's a prime, he should know, he should be well placed. Query him. You know, you don't want to just back a horse just because you've got a position. You know, just because they oh yeah, great, come on. You know, evaluate from your point of view their chances of winning. You know, take the time to do that. Quiz them, ask them what their capabilities are, what they've done before. The same as if you were prime. Okay, so you've read the cover letter, you've read the terms and conditions, read them a couple of times, so now you're aware generally of what the response is looking like. So you've now got to digest the statement of work. And this is essentially what work you're going to need to do during the project period. Now, in a PECS proposal, this will probably be constructed in often by you, because this is your opportunity. You will need probably to form, you know, they'll give you a general statement of work, as in, you know, we'll expect this, this and this, but they don't know what the opportunity is. So you'll have to construct, in essence, the tasks, you know, how you think it can need to be broken down. That'll be a job for you. Rather, they're not going to dictate that in this case. You will have to do that. Normally in there you've got any schedule constraints that they may be under. Now, sometimes they'll suggest a schedule, sometimes not. Yeah? Sometimes they'll just say, we need this done in 9 months, but we don't really care how you break that up, what milestones you may apply, you know, but sometimes they're very precise on what they want and by when. So that will be clear in the statement of work. In PECs, maybe there'll be, I guess, a general time period. But other than that, you'll be free to define the schedule, define maybe milestones across that. In there will be the documents you'll be expected to produce. It may be that you will need to define that within the PECs opportunity. And so you should have a list of documents, and there's some parts of the proposal you should put that. And then the final point, don't start reading this first before understanding what the exam question is. You know, so don't run off with yeah, I can't wait to get all technical and start playing with the technology without understanding the other aspects. You know, too many organisations do that. They get excited about the technical aspects. Be sure of the commercials and what you're being asked to provide. Okay, so just an overview of the STCs. These really are the exam question. We'll come to one in a moment in a real example, so you can feel what's in there and how in depth they are. This will clearly state how and what they want in each section of the proposal. Now it's up to you. You can opt to split this over volumes and have separate volumes for each part, or you can combine them. Yeah, if it's a small opportunity, just combine them. Save yourself a bit of effort. But if it's a large response, likelihood you've got multiple owners of documents, better to have separate documents and then just print and combine them into a folder later. The STCs will make things, will also point out things like, on the cover letter, we'll also point out how many copies, physical copies they may want. Some tenders are very clear. They want not only an electronic copy, but want it in print. So nobody can tamper with it. So they know what they're going to get. And they want that, a number of copies supplied to a certain address, depending where you're responding to. So it might be, I guess in PECs it's probably ESTEC. So if they're asking for a physical copy, that needs to be there by the deadline. So don't underestimate or forget that you need to ship this thing. Or someone will physically need to go there. There's nothing worse than, oh no, this thing needs to go to ESTEC and you've now only got 2 days. And the DHL said, oh no, I can't do it can't get it until 4. Oops. You got a problem. So you can get pain financially if you don't, plan around that. So your bid manager should be looking at things like that. Be clear how many physical copies, if any. PECs may not request that. Yeah, may do it and may not. So as again, the cover letter will state that how many and where and what time they've got to be there. Usually it's 12 or 1 o'clock, kind of midday delivery. But understand that, and if you need to ship a document, talk to service providers early. Understand, what their deadlines are, what costs are associated. It's always wise, if you do submit via post, to make ESA aware of that. Because if something goes wrong and the DHL or someone else is delayed, for some reason or another, you've got some course to go back. You don't have a piece of paper or any evidence that you've done that. And what day they did it on. They advise typically shipping 5 days prior. So if you think about that, you've got 4-week bid period. It could be a week gone, just on the shipping. So understand your constraints. So the last point there, as I said, this helps you to construct your overall table of content. It's not the limit, it's the minimum really. If you can see some additional points that you want to add them. But it's the minimum and how they're going to start to look at it. So it doesn't conform, there's a chance it ends in the bin. Okay, so you've you've gone through all the documents, you understand the work you need to do, you understand all the constraints, and you've gone and sat through the terms and conditions, and you've built an overall table of content. Yeah, so we're going to now look at the specifics of a technical proposal response, yeah, and what they'll generally look for in there, and what you should be thinking about. So you should critically review the requirements, yeah. So you should look at requirements and challenge things if things don't make sense. But do this in the right way. You know, be positive about it. You know, not only identify, but show how you'd solve that, or how that should be firmed up, or why it's not. You know, put some logic around it. Now, as I said, ESA is a technical organisation, so they really enjoy that. You know, they like to understand. Oh, okay. You know, they realise they're not always get everything right. So if there are challenges in there, identify them, show them why. You know, relate them back to evidence, and be positive about it. They may be missing requirements, things that you know should be done, but are not there. Again, talk about them, discuss them, cover them. Cover every single task in the statement of work. Or if you're developing the statement of work, or developing the tasks in the PECS program, talk about them. Just don't call them, you know, task one is this, task one is so. Talk about it, discuss why it's like that. Now, there are two parts of the technical proposal, and what we're covering now is the understanding requirements. Yeah, so there are two sections, which is show me you understand what you're doing. How, and then secondly, what's your solution? How are you going to solve that? Yeah, so the first part is very important, and the more you can relate it back to them, you know, because it works in this program, or it's connected to that, or you know, it just demonstrates more and more your awareness of the general environment. So you'll get a lot of positives for that. One of the worst things you can do is just write lots and lots and lots of text. Imagine yourself as a reviewer. In fact, find someone in your organisation who's got nothing to do with the ITT and ask him to be a reviewer. And give him some criteria of things to look for. If he's sitting there and he's bored after 10 minutes of read, you ain't got a good proposal. You know, you want to encourage them to read. So it should be interesting. You know, be encouraging, be passionate about what you're doing. If you are in that field already, you're going to bring it through. And they'll see that and they'll, wow, I want to keep reading this. So use illustrations, use diagrams, use tables, break text up. You know, make it interesting to read. Ask yourself the question, if you don't have a reviewer or a reviewer, you know, is this making sense? Is this enjoyable to read? Because they have a lot of proposals to read usually. Now if yours is, okay, it's a good idea, but boy, this is hard work. It's unlikely to succeed even if it's a brilliant idea. So you know, help them and help yourself at the same time. And it's good to have independent evaluators, people who are not in the response, yeah, because usually after a few weeks you're so ingrained in the ITT, you can see it, but an independent evaluator can't. So ask those questions and do it frequently. Don't wait until okay, 2 days before the end and the guy says, oh, this is rubbish. You've got to start again. And you haven't got any time to fix that. You know, that's a really horrible situation to be in. So do your best when you're constructing your bid plan to have clear review periods. And it's much easier for the reviewer to come in for just a few hours than sit there for a day trying to farm himself through that. So, you know, find someone who's independent, give it to them a couple of times, and let them comment on it. Give them the criteria of what you're going to be evaluated on, and ask them hard questions about it. Do you understand it? Do you know what you're going to... After reading that, is it clear what I'm going to give you? Because if it's not clear to them, why would it be clear to ESA? It won't. Now, so it should be very, very clear what you're proposing, how you're going to do it. Anyway, so essentially this is the understanding requirements part of the ITT is all about demonstrating that you understand what this piece of work is about. Or in the case of a PECS opportunity, that you understand why this is a good idea and why it's going to be beneficial. And you can, as much evidence as you can relate to that, statistical data, fact, program information, the better. You know, the more logic you can construct around that, the more passionate the response also around that, the far greater the chance. So then you've got the second part of the technical proposal. Let's say it's made up of two parts: understanding of requirements, technical solution. How you break down inside of that is up to you to a degree. Typically, they'll ask you to respond in an order which fits the statement of work, but that will be in the STC. Feel free to add additional sections if you want, but it will be explained there. The technical solution. Now, detail your solution. Discuss it and why that's the most favourable solution for them. Relate it again. Make very clear what you're proposing, what the outcomes of it are going to be, and use illustration. You know, there's an old saying in English: picture paints 1,000 words. And boy, doesn't it. You know, if you sometimes they'll put a page limitation count on you. They'll say there's no more than 50 pages. And first of all, you think 50 pages is never going to write 50 pages, and by the end you've got 100. And you're trying to get rid of stuff. So be concise and use illustration. You know, that's all I can say really, is try and make it an interesting read. Demonstrate compliance with the statement of work. You're most likely going to have to carve or create a section which defines your compliance. Yeah? So how have you met the criteria the statement of work has defined? This might not be the case in a PECS opportunity, by the way, because they are not defining requirements. Yeah? But this will be clear in the STCs if you need to do that. But they love traceability, and they're a very thorough organisation. They will look to make sure every step is linked. And again, try to do this. One tip I can give you is try to do this as you go. Because again, there's nothing worse than you've built a few 100-page response to this, and now you've got a 30-page checklist of where it is in the proposal. And you don't really want to sit there and go, okay, try to read this. So put the requirements in the section. Label them. So you can easily pick that information up where that requirement is met in the technical or managerial proposal. Now, so place the requirements, when you're building a TOC, place the requirements in the appropriate sections. And then at the end, the compliance matrix, very, very easy to do. Don't, and yeah, you'll get great. Trying to do that. You'll usually need to give some idea of how you're going to test, or some planning document that's perhaps part of the work, and they'll ask you for an early draft of that. They probably won't do this in a PECS opportunity, but it's not a bad idea to include it. You know, if you've got a test idea and a test plan, construct one, the basics of one. Don't need to go into absolute depth, but give them a flavour of how you intend to do that. Yeah, it's just a nice, from their point of view, when they're reviewing it, gives them a nice, comforting feeling that you know how to challenge that. You'll need to explain the work logic. You know, what's the process you're going to involve you? If it's software development, you'll probably need to talk about the methodology. Usually they have a very precise methodology. You'll have to talk about that. You know, if you're going to use some kind of agile technique or, you know, something like that, then you'll need to fit it within their overall process, because they won't break their process for you. You can group within it, and there are ways of doing that, but they won't break it. If you have options or things that could add on to that, you know, let's just say you're looking at an opportunity and you've solved it in the way they want, but you can see, oh, wait a minute, if I give them this block as well, they've really got a much polished solution. But they're not asking for that. Put it as an option. You don't need to go overboard on the option, so just talk about it for a couple of paragraphs, maybe an illustration or so, and then you need a price and a financial. So it's a relatively inexpensive way to add an option, because it'll just be discussed at negotiation anyway. So it's an inexpensive way of maybe adding something that you see provides a lot of additional value on top of the piece of work, and that it's clever to do that at this particular point. So kind of explain that angle. As I say, the STCs may ask for more. They may ask for very specific tables. They may ask for other detailed pieces of information, and within specific sections. So, you know, I know I'm going on about this, but I see it too many times. Management proposal. Another one which, yeah, if you get too many technical guys who love writing about software solutions and architecture, they tend to hate these documents. But they're evaluated very hard, in depth. So again, spend time on them. So the management aspects of a project are very, very important to ESA. So take the time and do it correctly. First of all, you need to sell your organisation. Why are you good for this? What's your capability? What have you done before? So that's the initial background information they'll expect. What's your organisation been doing? Same for your partners. If you've got subcontractors in there, don't ignore them. Don't leave them out. They should be in there as well. Each organisation who's in your team, or if you're subcontracting, you'll need to provide this to your prime. Explain your capability. Sell yourself. Don't just give a list of bullet points. Sell it. Explain why that capability is good for this project. Show how the overall team works, why it's there, why this team is the best team for them. Why did you construct it like that? Don't just put the list of the teams and don't talk about it. It's not valuable. Add value to that. So shape it and give very clear discussion around it. They will ask for the key personnel. So who's the people who are doing this? ESA love knowing who's doing the work. And it's one of their strongest criteria, really. Oh, I know this guy. He's great at this. I can't underestimate that aspect of it. Once you get people who are well known to them, it's a great scenario to be in if they like or enjoy working with those people. So you'll need their CVs and you'll need to talk about their experience. Again, don't be general or just copy what's in their profile or shape it for this particular piece of work. Dedication. One of the things ESA likes to know is how much time am I going to get from this guy? They typically tend to like high level of allocation. If you've got one guy's working 10% or 5 guys working 10%, it's just unlikely to work in practice. They tend to favour smaller, for a small piece of small study, they tend to favour small teams, high level of dedication. Maybe with some expert advice coming into that. Again, explain the allocation. If the guy's only 70% available, explain what else he's doing. Try and identify what risk could be around that and be open about it and how you're going to handle that. Because they'll think the question themselves. And if they don't, if you're not close, they won't even ask you a clarification. So as much information and as clear as you can be early on, the better. Because they'll just think, oh, they thought about that. It's a good place to be. If they're positive and feel strong that you're aware of these kind of challenges, gives them a lot of confidence. You'll need them to list all the items you're going to deliver them. They can do this simply, just use a table or something, but be clear of all the documents you're going to give them and what software you might give them or anything else that they ask, or hardware, whatever. But just have a very clear list of that. So you'll need a management plan. You'll need to think about your own quality, your processes, what do you use. You don't need to go in depth about it, but you need to explain them, what kind of system you may be using, or and how you're going to do that. What's the flow chart around that? What's the process around that? Briefly, but to the point, but still I like to understand it. The facilities that you're going to use doing the work. This is less of an issue if it's a software development than it is if you're going to build hardware. Where we're going to build this solar panel, but we're doing it in a garage. It's unlikely to sell very well. So if you're doing, depending on the type of work, it'll vary about how much you put into the facility section. Really, if you're just software developers in that kind of area, then it's a paragraph at most. If it's hardware, you'll need to go into a bit more depth to build that confidence. Again, it's just purely about confidence. After a while, when you get to be known names within ESA, you won't need to really do that. But if you're new to this work, new to them, then of course, they don't know you. So give them the confidence. You'll need to give an overview of the work package descriptions. This is now, you've broken the work down, you've got WBS, you'll now need to thrash that out. So what I mean by that is you need to go in depth. What's the inputs? What's the outputs? What's the actual tasks that this piece is going to do, and what will it deliver, and how will that flow? What's the relationships across the piece of work? Yeah, how these fit with each other. You know, no more than you do if you're a typical project manager, really. All that helps to build them the confidence then that if they give you this contract, you're going to be able to deliver it, and within the budget you've set. So it's a continuation of the management plan. So yeah, you need a meeting and a review plan, because it might be that you have a number of meetings that you'll need to attend. This will be specified usually in the statement of work. In PECs perhaps not, so you'll need to state that yourselves. You know, will you be intending to engage with them and discuss with them, and on what level of frequency you're going to do that. A project schedule with a critical path, and not just a picture, some text around it, particularly focusing on where the challenges will be. You know, if there's some critical parts where you're dependent on another piece, talk about them. You know, will you put some slippage in there? How will you counter that if there's a problem? Again, you don't need to go into massive depth, but focus on the value bit, on the value chain around that. Also provide an initial risk register. You know, what's the key risks this project's likely to go under? How are you going to mitigate them, and anything else? So you'll need to keep that throughout the project and keep evaluating, keep looking at it. So it will change, but they'll expect an initial plan. Okay, so some tips on what not to do. Don't copy and paste a statement of work, change some of the words, and basically repeat back to them what they've said. Nothing worse than that, and it's obvious. Yeah, it's and you'll be surprised how many rushed organisations do this. Yeah, they just farm back to them almost exactly the same text with no additional information, no reasoning why. I mean, yeah. And if you're a prime, get content early from your subs. Yeah, so don't be waiting until the last week and they hand over and it's obvious now that all they've done is take the statement of work and just churn it back, you know, in the particular tasks that they're doing. Because that's a real pain. So as I say, yeah, frequent integrations of the technical proposal and get it reviewed. Don't just sit and integrate it and don't look at it, you know, until the last minute review, in which you find out you've got a problem. Don't complain in the ITT. You know, don't make, you know, if you might have some challenges and some issues with it, but you know, deliver them in an interesting way. Or show the rationale behind your thinking is what I'm driving at. Don't have, you know, don't create a very singular report that doesn't think beyond the edges of it. You know, yes, it's going to be like, that's absolutely it. You know, talk around it, discuss it, not be narrow-minded. And a non-compliant bid. You know, ESA looks at compliance with the statement of work very, very carefully. They're contractual people. So, you know, one of the first things you have to understand is, can you do this compliantly? In the case of PECs, you don't really have that problem, but because you know, you're creating the tasks within your overall idea, so it's a different situation to be in. But if you are going to be compliant, you know, understand the level of compliance, whether you're just partially compliant or you really are absolutely fatally compliant. If you've got a lot of fatals, you know, could really consider your position. Okay, so one of the things I'd like to do is, I mean, has everyone got like Word or some kind of word processor? Even Notepad will probably do, to be honest. I just thought it would be interesting to do a little hands-on, just to create a very top-level table of content. One, because it gets you to think about STCs, to remember that, and remember that that's there. So it's not a complex exercise, but just something to break it up a little bit. I have the answer on the next page, so it doesn't matter. So if people have got Word, can people open that? Or Notepad or any other kind of text editor is really fine. I mean, clearly if you don't want to participate, fine. Andreas, can we open up the... So we're only going to do a very top level, but it just helps you to think a little bit about where this information is and how we'll do it. and we'll break down a little bit in the technical proposal. Okay, so I've in the session 2 directory, I've put some ITTs, or one ITT, the statement of work and tender conditions. So I'm going to open the tender condition document. Has everyone got that document open? Let's give you another minute. It's the document mark, just to be clear, it's the document mark TC00PE. TC will always stand, it'll always be marked as tender conditions, basically. Even though you'll often refer to as STCs or SCOTs. So if we scroll down this page a little bit. Oh, that's quite cool.
Kellelgi on need USB-d, mis läksid ringi käima.
Okay. So I mean, just to give you, just to show you, as you can see here, the cover letter, what they're expecting is detailed. I mean, what I would typically tend to do is take this and turn it into a checklist, and you give that to a reviewer. And I'll make sure you've answered the exam questions in the right way, and get someone to check that off. Because it's easy to miss something, particularly if the tender conditions are large. Probably in the PEC sometimes they won't be. So they're what they expect in the cover letter. Don't get daunted by this document, by the way, because some of the things are very easy. They only require a couple of sentences or something. But and here we've got the technical proposal. Usually the technical proposal section is quite small. So if we, I mean, what I'd like you to do, I've got the answer on the next page, but is to do a top level TOC. Yeah, so starting from the top here. We just take the top level heading, so our cover letter would be starting, yeah? Don't break that one down. Break the technical proposal down into subsections that they're asking you for. And then again, top level, so we're only looking, Andreas, how do I swap this back over just so I can remind people of where? Yeah. So, we only want to break down on the technical proposal. There's only a couple of headings under that if you read them. You don't need to keep the same order, yeah, as long as they're there. It's not important the order. What's important is that they're there. And just a reminder that an executive summary, should you choose to include that, which is often a good idea, because if you can, in half a page or a page of text, you know, be very warming of your idea, be very excited about your idea, that doesn't half make a review team think, oh, I want to read this. I want to go and read that. So it is an option. It's not always requested. Sometimes it is, but you can include it in any. So just take, I guess, 5 minutes. And have a look at the top level sections. It should be quite easy to pull off. And then break down the technical into a couple of parts. Again, there's not many in the technical, so it's a relatively straightforward task. I've got what it should be on the next answer, or at least what I would do. So you can review against it later. I know this may sound a bit simple, but it's good to get used to these documents, how they look, and that they're there, how they will generally feel like. It's a worthwhile activity. So I'll just give maybe 5 minutes to do that. So just another minute. Okay. I mean, I guess the first question to everyone is, I mean, how was that? I mean, when you were looking at it, did you feel overwhelmed? Was it straightforward? How was it? Just getting a feel for that document. Sometimes they can look a bit daunting, but you'll get used to them. And after a while, usually they're very, very similar in the most part. Anyway, so my answer to this was something like this. I mean, it doesn't matter if you use slightly different names or terminology, but this is how I constructed. I slightly modified the order, yeah, I mean, the cover letter, you would optionally put in the exec sum following that. The technical proposal split into 4 parts. So understanding of the requirements, your technical solution, the technical approach to the work, compliance or compliance matrix, and your discussion about the third-party products. This is getting particularly more interesting for ESA. Just to be aware, IPR licensing is something that they're certainly over the last few years they're getting far more structure around, a lot more governance in place, using products that are unknown to them or that you've not relayed to them in advance. I mean, you could get caught on something like that. So be very clear, and as you go through the work, particularly if you're building software, what third-party products, dependencies that they have, because it can cause them severe problems. If they're issuing that software, can they deliver, can they receive the third party legally? You know, this gets complicated, particularly with open source software, depending on the type of license and the viral effect that can have. So, they're very, very stringent, very clear governance that they have on this. Work on that. It'll be inside the draft contract, what kind of conditions you're expected to be under, and the statement of work might talk about it. But my recommendation is a very strong governance, particularly in the area of software engineering, and particularly around dependency chains and dependency management. It's very easy to pick a cot up and all of a sudden it's got 30 others that you don't declare, and one of those is some viral licensed products. So I have good governance. Okay, so then the implementation and management proposal, financial sections and exceptions and non-compliances. What can't you live up to and why? So you've enjoyed 4 or 5 weeks of responding to an ITT. One thing to point out is if you get a response and you feel, oh, we can really do this, but we've got a problem on resources, then put in for a delay. Make a formal request for it. Often they have some capacity in the schedule to slip it marginally. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah. So if you really think, hey, I can respond to this, but a week or 2 weeks would not make the difference, put in a request for delay. That'll be given to everybody, not just you. But it's sometimes quite a nice luxury to have if you're running a bit late, or the ITT comes out at a point where your 2 key guys have just gone on holiday. Yeah, you can certainly request it from the contracts manager, and if they've got it, they usually will try to do something if they've got something in the path. So your TEB is sat, it's just received all your wonderful documentation, and it's sitting there pouring through this and having a lot of trouble because they're now all great offers. What do we do? Anyway, they will sit and discuss, and both from the management point of view and the technical point of view, and eventually arrive at some conclusions, which in this case will be more than one. So several recommendations will be made. Then, if that is endorsed, there usually be some form of negotiation meeting or negotiation/kick-off meeting, and if you're very lucky, no negotiation at all, and you're off to kick-off. They might have a bit of a discussion about some clarification within the response at that time, but it pretty much will be proceeding at that point. And then, if negotiations/kick-off goes well, then you'll be into contract award. And hopefully many of you will be. Okay, so just a bit of a refresh here. I understand it's a lot of information, so just to hammer home some parts. Read all the documents thoroughly. Now have a clear bid decision. Know why you're bidding, what you intend to do, whether you're going to be prime or whether you're going to be sub. Execute your planning. Build your plan and execute it. Have a team, organise your response, organise your subs, be clear of responsibilities. Focus on the statement of work, because that's really what you're trying to achieve, is to answer their solution. In this case, in PECS, I suspect the statement of work will be quite broad, because it will be asking you to bring an idea forward and to shape that into tasks. There will be statement of work, no doubt, but it will be different. It won't be explicit, I want to do A, B, and C. It'll be, bring your idea and structure it in this kind of way or that kind of way. Be clear of the exact tasks you're going to do. Have a very clear work breakdown, which you can evolve into clear work package descriptions later. Read the statement of work and compare it against the work breakdown structure you've put in place. So it's just a simple check to make sure you've not missed anything. Have independent reviewers. That really is a very wise thing to do if you've got it. Yeah. Be consistent and balanced in each of the chapters. Don't have, an understanding requirements section which is a paragraph, and a technical solution which is 50 pages. How can you have drawn that if you clearly don't understand what's being asked of you? Make sure there's a strong consistency at the end between the WBS and the work package descriptions, and make sure the proposal is well presented. Again, this is where your reviewer comes back in. Challenge him. Does he enjoy reading this? Does he think to himself, wow, this is captivating, I want more? Make sure the first sections of the first paragraphs of each section are thrilling. Yeah? If you're not bitten by reading the first paragraph, you're unlikely to read it. And they may have people within the TEB that will really be focused on specific loves they have. I'm the software engineer guy, so I'm going to concentrate on the methodology, or I live this type of technology, so I'll focus on that. So make sure each section you feel that way when you're reading it. If it's a very, very technical response, don't get lost in the low-level noise of everything. That might be wonderful for you, but will all the audience understand what you understand? So be careful. You can go into detail, but maybe start the sections in a bit more broader, for a more broader audience. The guy who's really interested in your bit, I assure you, will go down into the detail, because that's the bit that he'll be excited about. But you'll have, contractual people and a few other people there that won't know that kind of technology or the depth of it, or But if they're keen to read it and think, wow, this is good, then you're already in a very, very good place. Okay. So what I've additionally put on the end here is. I probably won't work through all these now, but there are maybe 6 or 7 slides which map it. So map the typical evaluation criteria. There are 5 they typically will use. what the relationship is between that and sections of the statement of work or special tender conditions, back to the what part of the proposal. So in this case, the management financial proposal, yeah? If we go to criteria 2, this is mainly the technical proposal. So now this is a nice way to just recheck, build a checklist around this, or some way that you can reevaluate later. Have you done it all? Have you done everything you can do to get the most amount of marks you can get? And is it clear? Have you missed anything? So criteria 3 is quite big. No, sorry, 4. Sorry. So I've in criteria 4, I've split it up into which proposal it affects, yeah, and which sections it should be in. What's on? And again, evaluation criteria 5. So it's a good, make yourself aware of it, keep it around, give it to your bid manager. It's a nice way for them to just cross-check themselves, everything's there. It's very, very unlikely that the whole of this you'll be asked for in a PEX response, yeah? As we're trying to build, ESA's trying to build capability, interest, and all the rest of it. So I wouldn't be too I wouldn't be daunted at all. What you'll get from this is an advantage, because if you can look deeper and bring more, you'll likely score more. It's that simple. It's all about convincing them, giving them the confidence that you can do this work, this piece. Because maybe you're breaking into new ground, something different. I mean, in that particular case, you really need to convince them that you can do that. And it's worthwhile, and it matches where they're going. So now is the point in time, if you have a proposition in mind of something you want to do, start to do your research to link it to things that they're doing. Because then you start to show a very, very good value chain from what you're proposing to what their needs are, and also Estonian industrial needs. And if you can balance those things off with a very, very strong proposal. Okay, so any questions? I know it's been quite a lot in this last hour or more. So has anyone got any specific questions or things that they'd like to ask? Or
if something remains unclear on the document back, can we, or can the potential applicant ask ESA to specify something, and if it is possible, then how's the response? Is it to all bidders or?
yeah, okay. So yeah, in the cover letter will be a process for receiving clarifications, and it will normally end something like a week before submission. Yeah. So there'll be a deadline cut off that you make yourself aware of, and any clarification raised within that window will be responded to, but to everybody. Yeah? There'll be no. Once you're into that situation, then it's a fair game. So if you have a question, then everyone will get the answer to it. But no one will be informed who supplied the question. Yeah, so if you put a question in, and I also receive a clarification a couple of days later, I will not know you generated it. Yeah, it will not be disclosed.
If there are many, then they will respond to them in one time, or
they may. They may. This is not defined really. So they may, if they get a bunch of clarifications at the same time, they might group them all together. Alternatively, they may respond to them individually. How many technical clarifications you would raise on a PEX, it's not likely to be many, because this is your ground. This is your time to create that new idea, to bring forward thoughts, or to evolve something that's already there but take it in a new direction. So that it's unlikely, it's more likely to be around some particular point of the statement of work, or maybe some documents they're asking you to do, or something within the terms and conditions of tender that are not clear, or maybe some contractual issues that you find when you read the draft contract, oops, don't like that. I've never, in the last PEX round I was involved in, it wasn't done through EMITS, it was a very simple process, so it's hard to say quite how far they'll go, but you're now very well educated. Beyond the, up to a full tender. Now there's enough information here to let you deal with a full tender, but it's unlikely that you'll have the constraints of all of this. Yeah? So read the tender conditions, understand the evaluation criteria under, and use these as a means to put together the most appropriate approach.
Can you say something, maybe it's a specific question, but can you say something regarding cooperation with foreign countries in the frame of PECs?
Ooh, no, but I would imagine that it will be an Estonian-only response. Maybe if you had to buy some piece of hardware that was only made in certain country, yeah, it could be okay. But in terms of a development activity, I mean, this is probably something more for Enterprise Estonia to clarify on, but I would think no, yeah? Unless there's a very, very good, compelling reason.
If I remember correctly, then there was an issue with Poland some years ago. They were trying to procure too much outside.
Yeah.
But the government wanted to keep the money within the...
Yeah, sure. I mean, the whole idea of the program is to develop your industrial capability. So as much, if not all of that money is best staying here, you know, for you to, you know, to build capability. I mean, it's not. I mean, in general, though, it's no different a rule. Yeah, I mean, when you will see IPTs in the future, no doubt that will be limited to 1 or 2 countries, and again, the same rule will apply. Yeah? Unless you've got a very, very, very good reason, i.e., it isn't built in one of these countries, and I absolutely must have it. You know, so look for alternatives.
Yeah, because it's a good preparation for the future, also to reduce cooperation in such a framework.
Sure, but if you're talking about, for example, an ESA piece of software that's maybe wrote in a different member state, usually if you ask ESA, they will license it to you. So therefore, there is no cost to it, so there's no money leaving, but you get your chance to put your hands on it and develop capability on something that's already there. Yes, so it's different. So usually ESA is very favourable to reuse of a product. So it's a good, those kind of ideas can be good opportunities to develop capability or to evolve something that's there. Yeah, but no money is, you know, all the effort is spent in the country and evolving and generating capability. So you know, those can be interesting areas to evolve something. You know, ESA quite like that. You know, they're very much ones for reuse where they can, or evolving something. Any other questions or points?